on behalf of IABA UK, I'm Adriana Silva, and I would like to welcome here and welcome Nick de Voil, who is our speaker tonight. Nick is, as I said, he's a pillar of our profession, let's put it this way. He's been the president of IABA UK chapter for 8 years. He was the person who initially designed the website we used from 2014 to 2024. And he's been on a mission, that's how he described himself, to make systems more people-oriented. He's been promoting user-centered design among businesses or in the business analysis community for the last 15 years. And he's been doing that through speaking, through writing and running training courses. In addition to having been IIBA director, he continues to collaborate with us, like tonight. And he is also the author of the BCS book, User Experience Foundations, which is in line with the BCS Foundation certificate in user experience. Other interesting or great facts about Nick is that he's very prolific. You can connect with him on LinkedIn, and you may have already seen his series of articles published by BA Digest on group construct analysis, which is an approach to understanding people in organizations, which draws insights from different areas such as sociology, anthropology, linguistics, and psychology. I definitely recommend reading the sessions. I've been fascinated with them, and maybe at another occasion we can have Nick to talk us through and experience the group construct analysis. What I will ask you for people who joined recently, you may have noticed that you logged with my name, Adriana Silva. So please click on the 3 dots on your name in the meeting, and please rename yourself so we can know who is joining us now tonight. Okay, please do that. And during our session, the Q&A will be available. If you would like to make a question, please don't put on the chat. Feel free to interact via chat, which is open as well. But if you have questions, please put in the Q&A so we can properly address them in the end. Okay? And without further ado, I will pass on to Nick. Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you, Adriana. It's great to be here. It's a real pleasure to be here. So let me see if I can now. Oh yes, I am now the host. And it's a pleasure to be here with so many people called Adriana Silva. It reminds me of the Spartacus film where they come to arrest Spartacus, and they ask, who is Spartacus? And one by one, everyone there who stands up and says, I am Spartacus. No, I'm Spartacus. No, I'm Spartacus. So it's a bit like that. So it's good to see people's real names gradually appearing there. So I'm going to see if sharing my slides is going to work. Hopefully it has done so. Does that work? Can you see my slides?
Yes, I can see them.
That's brilliant. Okay. So as Adriana says, I'm Nick de Voil, and I have been promoting user-centered design amongst business analysts for quite a while now. And I'm pleased to say that over the last 15 years or so, a lot of the techniques that are associated with user-centered design have become much more well-known amongst the business analysis community. So I'm thinking of things like personas, journey maps, other techniques as well, but perhaps those are the 2 most well-known ones. But what I also have found is that those techniques are not necessarily being used to best effect. Sometimes people are focusing on the deliverables, the documents, rather than the understanding of the users that underlies those techniques and is embodied when you use those techniques. So that's really the first message from this evening. If I can kind of give you a spoiler there, it's about paying attention to the users and learning about the users rather than focusing on the deliverables or the documents. And the second point that I'm going to address really is which people should we be paying attention to when we do our projects? Because there are lots of different people associated with a system or a service or a product that we create. So we need to pay attention to the right people, and we sometimes get that wrong. So user-centered design is a commonly used term. I prefer to use the term people-oriented design. And the reason that the dolphins are on the slide, besides them being nice dolphins, making a happy smiley face, is that a pod is the technical name for a group of dolphins or a family of dolphins, and pod stands for people-oriented design. I like to call it people-oriented design rather than user-centered or human-centered design, because user-centered to me kind of implies that you're thinking about the people in the situation as users of your system or your service or your product. And that by doing that, you're immediately relegating them to a place of secondary importance. So if we talk about people-oriented design, we are not doing that. We are relegating the system to a place of secondary importance, which I think is the right way of thinking about it. So let's talk about this lady. This lady's name is Seema Misra. Now, I first gave this presentation 13 months ago at the Business Analysis Conference Europe last year, and I asked the audience if they knew who Seema Misra was, and not all of them did, but some people did. Probably more people know by now because they've watched the television series Mr. Bates and the Post Office. So Seema Misra was a sub-postmaster. She was the sub-postmaster at the post office in West Byfleet in Surrey. And she was accused of stealing £74,000 from the post office on the basis of information that was produced by the computer system that she needed to use in order to do her job. That system is called Horizon, and a lot of people have heard of that now because of the scandal that has been coming to light over the last, well, couple of years, but it's been bubbling up for a couple of decades, really. Post offices in the UK are run as franchises. So they are kind of, they belong to the post office, but the people that run them, it is their livelihood, and they tend to put all their savings into that business, and they put a great deal of effort into it. So Seema Misra was actually found guilty of stealing £74,000. She was sent to prison. She was actually pregnant when she was sent to prison. She was sent to prison on her son's 10th birthday. I think that's right. She had her second child while wearing an electronic tag. As a result of being convicted of this theft, she lost her job, she lost her livelihood, and she lost her home. So it's not a very happy story. And as you probably know, she was one of several hundred sub-postmasters who were convicted on the basis of information from this computer system. Now, we know a lot more about what were the failings with the system and what were the failings with the organization or organizations involved. But I want to think about this from the point of view of the people who designed that system. If you like, the business analysts who were involved in the creation of that system. Because I think that if those people had used what I call people-oriented design, the problems that happened later would not have occurred. The stakeholders at the post office and at Fujitsu, the system supplier, would not have felt obliged to spin the web of lies that they did spin. around the system being reliable when it wasn't reliable, because they would have made sure that the system was reliable. They would have designed it better in the first place, and they would have thought about things more carefully. So why does this happen, and why does a people-oriented approach help to avoid these things? Well, if you're designing something, whether it's a new computer system or whether it's a new process or one of the other things that we as business analysts get involved in creating, you can think of it as a product, a new product. It's a shiny new thing. We can think of it as a shiny box. So our box here is the center of your world when you're working on that project, and it's shiny. So I put some nice shiny stars there to show that. As a business analyst, you're going to think about that product in context. You're going to think about use cases. So you're going to think about the users of that product. There will be one set of actors interacting with your system. There'll be another set of actors interacting with it, and so on. And you'll think about how they need to use that system, what functionality it needs to provide. And we can draw a boundary around that system. It's a system boundary, and we can say, this is our system. This is everything of concern to us. And we've designed a particular sort of system there. We've designed what people sometimes call a socio-technical system. A socio-technical system is one that includes human beings, and it includes technology such as hardware and software and so on. And when we're working on that project, this is the way that we think about the system. And it's the way that the developers will think about the system as well. However, if you think about those people that we just saw on the diagram, your system is not in the middle of their world, like it was in the diagram we just saw. What's in the middle of their world? Well, guess what? They're in the middle of their world. So if you think about the interior life of those people, what people sometimes call the life world of those people, they're in the middle of it. Well, what else is in their life world? Well, other people are in their life world. Most of us, the most important thing in our world is other people. Our family, our friends, our colleagues, our boss, all sorts of other people are important. They're not necessarily the same people that are important to the business analyst who define the requirements for the system. And there might be other things in this person's life world. They're probably concerned about money. They've probably got financial concerns. Most of us do. Maybe they're thinking at any given time about the film that they saw last night. Maybe they're thinking about, have I remembered to feed the dog or let the dog out in the garden? Maybe they're thinking about, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? Maybe they are wondering about how their football team is going to get on tomorrow night. Who knows? They could be thinking about all sorts of different things, and they are thinking about all sorts of different things. But you'll notice that what is not shown in their life world here is your system. Where is your system on this diagram? Well, here it is. It's not a shiny box as far as they're concerned. You might feel it's a shiny box, but to them it's a weird, slightly disagreeable, slightly alien thing that's right on the periphery of their consciousness. So there's only a small part of that system that actually impinges on their world. They don't necessarily understand it, and they don't necessarily like it. So I'm afraid, the bad news for us is the users don't care about your system. They care about all the other stuff that's in their life world. They don't care about your system, but you need to care about them, because in your system, that picture that we showed on the previous slide, they are the most important elements of that system. The human beings are the most important element of that system, because they are the people that give the system meaning. They're the most complex elements of the system, believe it or not. They're more complex than any IT system, the human beings in that system, and they're unpredictable. They have their own agenda, their own things that they're trying to achieve. And if we don't pay attention to them, we won't design a good system. So we need to try and understand this, the life world of each of these people, because our system won't work if we don't focus on these people. So this is a completely different change of focus. It's a completely different change of emphasis for most business analysts. Not thinking about what's inside the shiny box, but thinking about what's inside the people. They are the most important elements of your system. And of course, you might say, well, how do I understand what's inside all those people? And my system has got dozens of users or hundreds of users or thousands of users or tens of thousands of users. How can I possibly understand all those people? Well, that's what the well-established techniques of user-centered design, human-centered design are all about. It's about getting out of the building, going to where your users are, if they are outside the building, and studying them, learning about them. That's people-oriented design. So not all projects succeed. Clearly, the Horizon system on any sensible measure could not be considered a success. So people-oriented design, it's not an additional cost for a project. What I've the user experience people that I know have been complaining about for the last 5 or 10 years is that organizations have progressively been downgrading the importance of user experience and user-centered design. And instead of paying more attention to it, they've been paying less attention to it. That is a bad mistake, because paying attention to users is not an additional cost. At the end of the day, it's a way of saving money, because it's an essential tool for de-risking your project. If you know that your system is going to work for people, that's a big plus, and that's a big de-risking that you've carried out. If you don't really know whether it's going to work for people, all sorts of bad things could happen, as we've seen in the case of the post office so dramatically. Here's another person. This lady, her name is Poppy McRae, and this picture is a still from a movie clip of an interview that ITV News did with this lady. She's a customer of a well-known high street bank, and she's being interviewed outside her local branch of the high street bank whose customer she is. And she is very worried and she's very angry. Why is that? It's because although she's got a bank account and her bank account has got some money in it, she is not able to pay her rent. She's got a standing order that's set up to pay her rent, but the standing order is not working because something has gone wrong with the IT system at the bank. She's just been into the branch to speak to the staff about it, because she's very worried that her landlord is going to throw her out, because if she doesn't pay her rent, the landlord will have an excuse to evict her from her flat. So she's been into the branch to ask about this, and they've told her, yes, we can see there's a problem, but we can't fix it. There's nothing we can do about it. The IT system will not allow us to fix this problem. We'll let you know when the problem is sorted out. Well, clearly, if she gets evicted, it's going to be too late. So that's not a very happy story either. And this, it turns out that the IT project that we're talking about here is a very well-known IT project that happened a few years at this major bank in the UK. They decided it would be a good idea to replace all their systems in one go and turn the switch and go with a kind of big bang rollout, because they didn't have time to do any testing properly. And on the next slide, we're going to see a real excerpt from the real risk register on that project. And this is what the risk register on that project says. So the top of the list of risks is excessive complexity. The program may fail to deliver within the time frame because of excessive complexity. Okay, fair enough. Resilience, blah, 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 blah. It goes down and down. There's all sorts of things identified. Number 8, almost at the bottom of the page, customer. There is a risk that customers are negatively impacted through loss of existing services, if not fully replicated on target systems, blah, blah, blah. This is a bank. This is a retail bank. What has a retail bank got? A lot of people think that banks have got a lot of money. Well, actually, they don't. They borrow all the money that they've got. Who do they borrow it from? Their customers. The money that you and I deposit in the bank is actually the money that we are lending to the bank so they can lend it to other people. And that's how a bank makes money. So if you're depriving your customers of services, you're likely to lose all your customers. And if you lose all your customers as a bank, you'll be out of business. So losing the confidence of your customers is the worst thing you can possibly do as a retail bank. So that's a bit of a problem. And I find it fascinating that the customers are so far down the program risk register. Because not all risks are equal. So it's very important when we're creating a new system to think about what might really go wrong in this situation. What's important? You know, we need to have a sense of proportion. And as I said before, the most important thing in that socio-technical system is the human beings. So what we do as business analysts is we try to use user-centered techniques to focus on our users. And as I said, one of the most well-known techniques is personas. So here's a screenshot from a well-known tool that is out there that allows you to create persona descriptions. And this is actually a screenshot from the website of the company who are called Extensio. Their product is called Extensio. It allows you to produce rather nice, slick-looking persona descriptions for your imaginary people. What is a persona? It is an imaginary person that you make up in order to be able to think about your users in a structured way. The persona is an imaginary person who encapsulates what you know or what you think you know about your users, or a particular segment of your user base. So this is what Extensio have got on their website. You can see it looks very nice. It's got all these features, like it's got these sort of sliders here showing where this person is on the range of introvert to extrovert, you know, loyal to fickle, and all these different things. Which brands does he like? You know, I don't know what all these things mean, but apparently it's important. He's got a photo. He's got a little sound bite here. What do you think about this person? When you look at Clark Andrews, software developer, does he feel like a real person to you? I don't feel like Clark Andrews is a real person. When I look at this, I think, you know what this is? This is a description of the developer that built Extensio. So if even the organization who are selling persona tools has got such a rubbish persona on their website, I think we're in trouble. However, when we got these tools available to us, we tend to use them, and we tend to put our faith in them. As soon as we got a tool, we like to use it, and if we produce a nice looking deliverable like this, we tend to think that we've done a good job and we've achieved something. What's this all about? This is a well-known painting by a Belgian artist called Magritte. You've probably seen this picture before. And at the bottom it says, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe," which means this is not a pipe. And what does he mean by saying this is not a pipe when clearly it is a pipe? Well, actually, his painting is a canvas with some oil paint on it. Or what I'm showing you here is a digital image which is showing up on your computer screen or on your phone screen. It's just a bunch of colored pixels. You can't put some tobacco in it and then smoke it. So it's not a pipe. So he's quite right. This is not a pipe. So what he's referring to here is this this tendency we have as human beings to mistake the representation of the thing for the real thing itself. And there's a writer called Alfred Korzybski, who was around quite a long time ago, who invented something called general semantics, who coined the saying, "The map is not the territory." And that's a saying that I love. It's very important for business analysts to take that on board. The map is not the territory. That explains why this is not a pipe, and it explains why this is not a user. Okay, this is not a user. It's a picture on a computer screen. This is actually not a persona. Why is this not a persona? It's because it's a persona description. It's just some pictures and some text that purport to describe our persona. But what the persona actually is the imaginary person that it's describing. The imaginary person is or should be an imaginary person that has been made up by the user researcher or the business analyst, if they're the person doing the user research, to represent what they've found out about the users, what they've really found out about the real users, not what they've dreamt up in a meeting room or something like that, what they've actually found out by doing real study of real human beings. So this is not a user, it's not a persona. It's not even a deliverable, because the deliverables from your project are things like working software, not bits of paper or digital creations like this. That's really important. That's one of the key points that I want to get across this evening. You might have seen me mentioning on LinkedIn that I was going to talk about the Barbie movie this evening. So that's one of the points that I want to make to start off with, is that personas are often bland, unconvincing, and have little connection to real life. So if you've created a persona that is like that, you have achieved nothing. In fact, you've probably achieved less than nothing, because you've sent your developers off in the wrong direction. They're focusing on something plastic rather than something real. We need to be focusing on the real people, not the plastic people. So I don't know how many of you have seen the Barbie movie. It's a really, really good movie. I urge you to see it if you haven't seen it already. And it's set in Barbie Land. Barbie Land is an imaginary alternative reality where the characters in Barbie Land are kind of reflections of Barbie dolls that are owned by human beings in kind of normal land. So here's our central character. Her name is Stereotypical Barbie, because she's a stereotypical Barbie doll, and she lives in her dream house in Barbie Land, and it's pink, or largely pink, and you can see there are all her neighbors. They also live in dream houses, and she has a lovely time. Every day is a great day for Barbie. She goes to visit her friends, who are these other Barbie dolls. She sits down with them and drinks coffee out of coffee cups that don't actually have liquid in them, which is great. So when they tip the coffee cup up, they don't spill coffee on themselves. It's all scripted, and when children play with dolls, everything is scripted. They repeat the same stylized situations over and over again. And I often think that when we use personas and scenarios to help us design computer systems or other products or services, We're in danger of doing the same thing. We imagine that real human beings will have experiences which fit into these very, very neat scripted versions of reality, when actually that's not the case. So personas actually can be quite dangerous. And there are some strange things that people get, people have written about personas. These are a couple of quotes from very well-known writers on user experience. One of them says, you can make your users more real by turning them into personas. Now, when you think about that, that is an absolutely extraordinary thing to say, because your users are real. They are real human beings. But when you turn them into personas, what you're actually doing is making them less real. You're turning them into plastic people to some extent. If you focus on the persona description, rather than recognizing that the persona description is just there as a repository for what you've learned about your real users. And this next quotation, as we isolate the persona with specific idiosyncratic detail, in other words, put more detail in the persona description, a remarkable thing happens. She becomes a real person in the minds of the designers and programmers. Well, that's another extraordinary thing to say, because she's not a real person, and you don't need your personas to become real people, because you've got real users who are real people. So it would be a good idea to focus on them rather than on your imaginary people. But when business analysts find out about techniques like personas and journey maps, they tend to be a little bit seduced by these techniques. And they sometimes think, if I produce these things, I will be being user-centered. And everyone wants to be user-centered. Your project sponsor, your project manager, everyone involved with your project. If you say we should be being user-centered, they will nod and they will say, yes, we must be user-centered. And they see you producing persona descriptions, and they say, well, I don't really understand what this is or why it's going to help, but it proves that we're being user-centered, so that's great. There's a lady called Tanya Snook who has coined the phrase UX theater to describe this. UX theater describes this phenomenon where teams and organizations and individuals kid themselves. They kid themselves that they are being user-centered just because they're producing persona descriptions or journey maps, even though those documents are not based on genuine user research. They're just made up. So that leads to a false sense of security. It promotes a patronizing approach which doesn't address users' reality. You may as well design for dolls. So don't. And that brings me on to a point that I wanted to make about using artificial intelligence. I've seen that people are using AI to generate personas and journey maps. Now, is that a good idea? Using AI to generate personas and journey maps? Well, I'll tell you my opinion. My opinion is it's an absolutely terrible idea. Because what I've been saying is that you need to pay attention to the territory, not the map. The territory is the real people. And the map is something that you say about the real people, such as a persona description. Well, how do large language models work? When we talk about AI, let's face it, we're normally talking about large language models, ChatGPT, things like that. When you ask one of those types of tools to generate a persona from you, it's not even basing what it tells you on studying the people. It's basing it on what it's found on the internet. It's been trained on everything it can find on the internet. So you are not mistaking the map for the territory now. You're either mistaking the map of a map for the territory, or very likely a map of the map of the map for the territory, or maybe a map of a map of a map of something that isn't even the territory in the first place. You don't know what that large language model has been trained on. So you're abdicating your responsibility for understanding your users by trusting a large language model to know anything about your users, and it probably doesn't know anything about them. So that is a total fail, really. That's the problem with using AI for that purpose. It might produce something that looks clever, but that thing that you're producing is nothing like one of your real users. So you're actually kidding yourself. Let's talk about the people that we pay attention to. So here's something that we're all familiar with, probably. It's a power and interest grid. And you may well have been trained you may well have been through the BCS training, where we learn that depending on the degree of power and influence that someone has and the degree of interest they have in the project, we need to take different approaches to dealing with them. So if a stakeholder is in the top right-hand corner, we will use an approach of constant active management because they've got high influence and high interest. This is all good stuff, except the bit that I have a problem with, which is the bottom right-hand corner. So if an individual or a group have a low amount of influence and a high amount of interest, what are we supposed to do with them? Well, according to the BCS syllabuses and books and so on, we have to keep those people informed. Well, keeping people informed is a one-way flow of information. It's implying that we are not going to consult those people. We're not going to ask them anything. We're just going to tell them what we've decided to do in consultation with the people in the top right-hand corner. And who are those people? The people in the bottom right-hand corner. Those are the end users of the system. Those are the customers. Those are the sub-postmasters. They are the Seema Misras. They are the Poppy McRaes. They are the real people at the sharp end of the change that you're implementing and the system that you're putting in place. So those are the people you should be paying the most attention to, because your system won't work if it's not effective for those people. So I say, don't keep those people informed. Continuously consult with them and verify at every stage of the project that what you're doing is going to work for those people. If the post office had done that with Horizon, if this bank had done it with their new IT system, those problems that I described earlier would not have happened if they had continuously consulted and verified that the system was going to work for the people in the bottom right-hand corner. Of course, there are often a lot of people in the bottom right-hand corner, and we've got to pay attention to the opinions in the top right-hand corner. They're the people in charge. But sometimes it helps people to accept the change that we're putting in place if we just pretend to be consulting them. In the Barbie movie, there is this character called Weird Barbie. She's my favorite character in the film, Weird Barbie. She's obviously a Barbie whose real life counterpart, the plastic counterpart in the real world, has obviously been given a haircut by the child that owns her, and she's not really recovered from it. But she is speaking to stereotypical Barbie in this scene. And the thing that she says to her is, she says she's offering her a choice between two different courses of action. You can either do this or you can do that. But at the end of the day, when they finish talking about it, it becomes apparent actually she doesn't really have a choice. And Weird Barbie says to stereotypical Barbie, I only said you had a choice to give you a feeling of control. Well, we can do that. We can do that with our stakeholders. That's okay. It's better than nothing. This is a diagram from my book where I try and bring some order to this rather confusing situation where we talk about stakeholders, we talk about users, and it's very confusing. This is all based on international standards. So according to international standards, your stakeholders can be divided into beneficiaries, antagonists, and other parties. Beneficiaries can be divided into users and other beneficiaries. Other beneficiaries include business stakeholders, such as managers, project sponsors, etc., and external stakeholders such as regulators. Then you've got your users include direct users who are the hands-on users and indirect users who are just using the output from the system. And your direct users can be divided into primary users. They're the people whose jobs you're automating or whose tasks you're automating or supporting in some way. And secondary users are just people who, yes, they are hands-on users of the system, but they're not the people that it's actually aimed at. So what we often do as business analysts is we pay too much attention to the business stakeholders because that's what we're trained to do and that's what we're paid to do. But if we want the system to work, the people we should be paying the most attention to are the primary users of the system. And that's what people-oriented design is all about. There's another model that you may well have seen in BCS materials or training courses, etc. The Sarah model. I'm not going to talk about this in detail, but all I'm going to say about it is it's about overcoming resistance to a change that you've already designed. And my point is, if you're trying to overcome resistance to your system, you've already failed. If that resistance is there, you're going to have an uphill struggle to actually try and overcome that resistance. What you need to do is design your project process so that you bring the stakeholders with you, including those people at the sharp end, those people in the bottom right-hand corner of the power and interest grid. When I saw the Barbie movie, there was something that stereotypical Barbie says right at the end of the film that really stuck with me. And I thought, what a great quote. I want to put that into a presentation. So I put it into this presentation. And what she says is, I don't want to spoil your enjoyment of the film too much, but she says at the end, I want to be a part of the people that make meaning, not the thing that is made. And I think we need to really take that into account because everyone wants to be a part of the people that make meaning, not the thing that is made. No one wants to be just a stick person on your use case diagram because they are real people with real concerns and your system won't work very well unless you understand those concerns. There's a guy called Gary Hamel who wrote a book called Humanocracy, where he talks about this hierarchy of capabilities that human beings have. If you're an employer, you can take for granted generally that people will be obedient. They will do what they're told. They won't just flat out refuse to do things most of the time. I mean, sometimes they will. You can normally take for granted that people will carry out their tasks reasonably diligently. And if you've done your recruitment and training properly, you can usually assume that they've got a reasonable degree of expertise. But what he says in that book is that those things, we can take those for granted in organizations today. Those are just your ticket to the game. You're really only going to succeed in business if you harness the capabilities that your people have got at the top of this pyramid. So initiative, allowing people to take the initiative, creativity, exploiting everyone's potential for finding creative solutions to problems, and even daring, your people having the courage to do things that aren't obvious or maybe seem counterintuitive or not best practice, but they're actually going to work and they're going to achieve remarkable things. So generally, when we're designing systems, if we're designing them the way that we're trained to as business analysts, we tend to, particularly I'm thinking about business processes here, we tend to assume obedience, diligence, and expertise. We very often don't build into the systems the ability for people to show initiative, to show creativity, to show daring, because we put them into a straitjacket of business rules and processes and so on. I'm going to show you this slide, but I'm not going to talk you through it. It's the 6 principles of human-centered design that are set out in ISO 9241-210, which is the international standard that my book is based on. And the key thing is that your project needs to be driven by what you find out about the users. And that means instead of making a project plan to build something, what you should be doing instead is making a project plan to learn stuff. Learn about your users, learn about the problems that they've got, learn about what's going to work for them and what's not going to work for them. Because all your preconceptions are probably wrong. So the more you can learn about people and their issues and the context that they are living in, and the environment that is real for them, the better. So that's what human-centered or people-centered design is all about. And here's this is a diagram from the book, which is the human-centered design cycle, again from the same ISO standard. And the point here is the reason that these 2 stages have got a little picture of a person next to them is that you cannot carry out these stages without involving human beings. You can't understand the context of use from your system without getting out there and studying real people in their real context. And you cannot evaluate your prototypes without giving them to real users and seeing if they can use them. It's not good enough just to have meetings with them. It's not good enough to give them demos or to run show and tell sessions. Those things are good, but they are not good enough because you won't learn from those things, or you won't learn nearly as much as you will learn by building a prototype, which is being created specifically to find out stuff, to reduce uncertainty, to learn things, giving it to users and watching them use it. And you will find out so much from doing that. And then you need to go around this cycle repeatedly during your project. And you will learn more and more about the context, and you will end up delivering something that is really appropriate for people, the right people in the right context. So having skipped over that list of principles in the ISO standard, I'm going to give you my principles, my list of principles for people-oriented design. The first principle is you are a designer. You might say, no, I'm not a designer, I'm a business analyst. Business analysts are concerned with what, not with how. Well, you know, there was a very well-known guy called Herb Simon, who is a very, very reputed... Apologies, the dog is barking because something's come through the door. He was a very reputed economist, and he was a seminal figure in the development of artificial intelligence. So that's really, really relevant to what we're talking about here. Anyway, he wrote a very influential book called The Sciences of the Artificial. And in that book, he said, everyone designs who devises courses of action aimed at replacing existing situations with preferred situations. So you are a designer because you devise courses of action aimed at replacing existing situations with desired situations. So you're a designer. What is it that you design? You design systems. So you need to think systemically. But if you think back to those 2 drawings that I showed you earlier with the circles, the most important thing in that system is not the shiny box, it's the people. The most important elements of the system are the people. So the most important and effective thing that you can do in your process is learn more about the people. So you need to ask yourself, can those people achieve what they need to achieve in their environment, in their context, using the system? And then you need to design for it. And then you need to test for it. And you need to find out, well, is the design that you created actually going to work? Then you also need to ask, what could possibly go wrong? You know, because in the real world, things do go wrong. It's no good just designing a system with a view to what we want to achieve. You've got to design a system with a view to what might go wrong, because something will go wrong. So you need to ask what could possibly go wrong and design for it. And you need to test for it. And then number 10, you need to repeat those steps throughout the entire project. Ask what can people achieve what they need to achieve, and ask what could possibly go wrong, and keep asking those questions and keep finding out answers to them. And if you're not finding out things that might go wrong, you're not looking hard enough. Because there will be things that could go wrong, and in Seema Misra's case, she put her own money into her post office system, and that was used against her in her trial as evidence that she was embezzling money from the system. She was stealing money from the system because she was mixing up her own money with the post office's money. But in fact, it was just a demonstration that she cared about this. It was her livelihood. She was prepared to put her own money into the system because it was the quickest way of solving the problem, and she needed to solve the problem quickly. If people had used a people-oriented approach, they would have understood that, and they would have designed a system that didn't allow the problems to occur that actually did occur. So my message from this evening really is, design for Seema Misra and Poppy McRae. Do not design for Barbie, because Barbie, although she's charming, she is not real. What you also need to do when you're doing that is beware the hippo. The hippo is the highest paid person's opinion. Don't fall into that hole with the hippo in it, because your stakeholders, those people in the top right-hand corner of the power and interest grid, they will put pressure on you to do things and cut corners that don't work for the people in the bottom right-hand corner. So be prepared to stand up for those people in the bottom right-hand corner. And design your system with people in mind, and that way it'll work, and you're actually doing the organization a favor as well. So those are all the people that I've got to thank for various elements of the presentation, and I want to thank you as well for being here and listening to me talking. So I'm going to look at the Q&A window, if I can find it here on my screen. Oh, that's interesting. I don't have any questions in the Q&A window. I think something must have gone wrong there, because I'm sure some people must have had questions. Let me just look see if I can find the chat window and see if there are any in there. Where is the chat window?
There are some reflections on your the points made, and people said great points, thought-provoking, quite valuable, very challenging perspective. So yeah, you have.
That's good to have some feedback. Are there any questions? Or if people haven't put questions in the chat window, would anyone like to unmute themselves and ask a question?
Hi, Nick. I've got a question, and thanks for this presentation. It's really helped me to rethink the way I approach my BA work. I was wondering what your thoughts were about the jobs to be done framework, and whether or not it's reflective of what POD tries to do or achieve. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So jobs to be done, or JTBD, as people sometimes describe it, that's a really, really interesting framework. And I think it does provide useful tools for understanding people. For example, there's a framework in there for the standard way that a person goes about carrying out a task. There is a kind of something like 7 generic steps involved in carrying out a task. So that's interesting. And it's you can have something called a job map, which helps you to think about so it's got this underlying metaphor of a job. The idea is that you hire a product to do a job for you, which is a nice sort of way of putting it, but it's just one way of thinking about it. And on your job map, you can say, well, what job is it that the person is trying to get done? And what are the related jobs? For example, what are the emotional jobs that they're trying to get done? And I think that's important. That's really important. I don't think that's particularly new. I mean, it's just another way of putting what, for example, Alan Cooper describes in his goal-directed design method, where he talks about different types of goals, emotional goals and things like that. But it's all valid stuff. I think the problem comes with JTBD when people try and you really standardize that approach, use a structured, predefined type of interview to talk to people, and focus overly much on the tasks that people are trying to carry out, because most user-centered design approaches do put a huge amount of emphasis on understanding the tasks that people are trying to carry out. And I've put some emphasis on that as well in this presentation. But there are other things, there are other aspects to trying to understand human beings than just the tasks that they are trying to carry out. And if you miss one of those tasks, it helps if you can also understand those people's value systems, which is what, Adriana mentioned earlier, group construct analysis, which I've been writing about. And that's what that's all about. It's about trying to understand people's value systems, really. And there's a guy, one of the people that's written a lot about JTBD, whose name escapes me for a moment. It's gone from my mind, but he's been posting a lot recently about how you can use AI to do your JTBD research for you. Well, that really worries me, for the reasons that I gave earlier, really. But if you can do user research, genuinely and effectively using AI, I don't have a problem with that. I would just like to see some evidence that it can be trusted. So I hope that that answers the question to some extent.
Yes, it does. Thanks a lot, Nick.
Any other questions?
Nick, someone asked in the chat if you could share the slides. Would you be able to do that?
Yes, I'll send the PDF version of the slides to you, Adriana, and you can do whatever it is you do with it. Yeah.
Okay, we would. If you are happy with that, we can upload along with the recording to the website.
Yeah, please, by the way, everyone, if you'd like to, be in touch with me, follow me on LinkedIn, or rather connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't follow me, connect with me. Or you can see I've put my Blue Sky handle on there. I find that there aren't any business analysts on Blue Sky, but I don't know why not, because it's really good. It's like the replacement for Twitter. If any of you has got a Twitter account, please close it. Don't give the proprietor of Twitter any more support than he gets already, because he doesn't use it for good purposes. He doesn't use it for people-oriented purposes. Use Blue Sky instead. So set yourself up with an account on there and connect with me on there as well. Anyway, I'm kind of changing the subject. What about some more questions?
Just checking with you if that's okay, Nick, because we're over our time, 2 minutes.
That's no problem for me.
Okay.
Then again, if there aren't any more questions, I will let people go.
Well, thank you very much, Nick. It really thought-provoking. I took loads of notes to reflect, to search for more, to learn more. And we are very, very honored and very lucky to have you with us tonight. So thank you very much for that. And thank you everyone who has joined us tonight. It's been, as we said, the event recording and the slides will be updated on the website. So you will find them available shortly in the upcoming days. Okay? Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you.